Here we go then.
We
have the season finale of Sunday Lunch here, and we've got another fantastic guest joining us. I'm John McGilvray.
And my name's Liam Rudden, and I'm monitoring, along with John, all the Facebook comments. So if you have any questions for our guest today, make sure you get them in. It's going to be a good one. This is where it's all been leading, the end of season 1, or is it series 1, depending if you're in America or you're in the UK. We've got a really special guest. Over to John, he'll introduce them.
Yeah, welcome along to Kevin Little. Kevin, it's brilliant to have you join us for the season finale. First and foremost, how are you and how are you keeping?
Well, hello. I'm great, and hello to everybody watching. I'm fine, all good, thank you. And it's great to be on. It's a pleasure, an honour.
And obviously, we've been doing through this throughout what we started the initial lockdown, and now it looks like things are sadly heading the wrong way. How have you been keeping through all this, and have you been busy, have you been working, and what have you been doing to get through it all?
Well, obviously from the word go, I've been very I'm self-employed, and I've obviously still got my garage in Kelso. So initially we have been a little bit apprehensive to begin with, obviously, as everybody was. So it was a bit tricky. We're very much sort of stuck at the beginning, wondering, like, what are we going to do? As everybody was, anybody business, any job and all that, so where are we going? We decided to stay open, and I was very fortunate that my staff were, or my employees, the lads who work for me, were as good as gold. Absolutely no problem. They wanted to work as well. So I was ably supported by that. I was able to stay open. So during the whole thing, business-wise, we've been able to stay open, and we've been very fortunate in that aspect. Family-wise, it's been great too. Everybody's been well. My kids are obviously they had to go away from school, but they excelled themselves, and they were really good at doing the homeschooling. And then obviously we've been a little bit quieter at work during that period. I was able to stay at home in the mornings and help out with that. My wife was working from home as well, so it was a good a balance and a good sort of family. I don't know what the word is. Just a great balance of the family, being involved with the kids and that on a daily basis was fabulous. So as things have turned out, it's been okay. Everybody's been well, and business-wise and family-wise, it's been really good. Actually, we've made a positive out of it. You know, obviously it's a terrible situation, but certainly personally-wise, it's been we've had a good positive time.
Good. I see Stuart McDonald's watching us. He spoke to us a couple of weeks ago. How are the ribs, Kevin?
Well, I think that was one of the first. Hello, Stuart, by the way. I still remember that moment, even though it's, I don't know how many years, was that 1993 or 4 or something at Oxford? And for those who don't know, I fell off, I think, Stuart, and I was clean over the top of me. And a few sore ribs even that day. And I missed, it was a double header. I remember we were supposed to go to Peterborough later, that it was at Oxford in the morning or something, and then Peterborough at night. But I spent the afternoon in the John Radcliffe Hospital at Oxford, thanks to that. But Stuart, I hope you're all right. I seen you the other week there on the telly, and it's good to see you again. And good luck with your return on a bike.
It was great to see you pop up on the questions and the comments the other week there, Kevin, and that's what, you know, John and I were like, why have we never had Kevin on? So we know that on a Sunday you occasionally pop in. Do you know what to expect then? Do you know what to expect from this today?
Kind of, a little bit, yeah. So hopefully it'll be okay.
Okay, well, I was talking about Hunter, and we're talking about there's been 3 in the history of Edinburgh Monarchs. There's been 3 Edinburgh captains born in Edinburgh, and you're one of them.
That's
but might be saying, well, you know, I knew you were going to ask me that. Brian Collins.
Okay.
And do you know what? The other name's gone. It's from the 1950s, but somebody will tell us. Somebody will tell us on the Facebook. And I was going to say, but there's a story, because although you were born in Edinburgh, you weren't brought up here, were you?
No, that's right. I visited Edinburgh for a few days, I think, because back in the days when you lived in the Borders and it was your first child, you went to Edinburgh, and I think you went. I was born in Eastern General, so everybody in my sort of era who were in the Borders kids, they were all born in Edinburgh. So I was born and raised in the Borders. Still live here in Melrose now. Originally from Kelso. So that's where we're at.
So you've got something in common with the and me, because I was an Eastern General as well, and so were the Gleamers. John, where were you born?
Glasgow. That's the second thing you boys have had about that this morning.
Yeah, isn't it?
Anyway, moving on, Stuart says when he got his bike last week, he's asking if there's a double comeback on the cards. You and Stuart in the pairs?
No.
No.
Simple as that. I did. I have ridden relatively recently, but it was well, 2016 was the last time I was on a bike, and I said to myself then that was the end of it. Prior to that, I'd ridden at Derek Snedden's meeting. You remember at Armadale, whatever that was, which was great. And I really enjoyed that. And then I was invited to do Christian Henry's meeting at Newcastle, and there was a load of us there from retired riders, Mark Lemon and James Greaves, to name but a few, Scott Robson, Richard Jewell, these sort of guys. And we were asked to do a flying lap, which was Christian's idea of the entertainment for the day. So I got a chance to ride Stuart Robson's bike, but also so did Richard Jewell and so did Scott Robson. So what happened that day was that we'd gone out, did a practice start. So Richard had gone out first, or Scott, did a practice start down the back straight in the third corner and fell off. I'm like, okay. And then did the flying lap. Dickie went out on the same bike, practice start, in the third corner and fell off. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. Did his flying lap. And then it was my turn. And and lo and behold, practice started down the back straight, in the third corner, and fell off. And I was like, this was no good. Did a flying lap, felt like a total novice. And that was it, into the pits, and that was it, game over. And I was like, if that's my last lap, then that was awful. It felt terrible. So I kind of convinced myself afterwards, and I was very fortunate. I thought, right, I'll have to have another go somewhere. So it was 2016, something like that. We went, and I got a chance. I got a bike, and I rode at Redcar. They did their training day or practice day there. So I had a day out at Redcar, and I enjoyed myself, and it was good. And I felt like I could do it again. You know what I mean? You jumped on it. I was like, right, that's how it's supposed to be. That's right. So
do you miss it?
No, not at all. Not at all. I enjoyed that day, and then that was me done. And I was like, right, okay, that's great. I'm happy then. But I don't miss it. Not the racing things. Well, I suppose you miss the racing sometimes. You miss the camaraderie, the banter, the being around the boys. You know, the crack and all that. You know, the meetings and the social side of it was always a huge part of the sport anyway in our era. So you miss that. You don't miss the travelling. You don't miss washing your bikes and all the time spent in the workshop, you know, putting all that together. I don't know how I had the time at the time anyway to do it, because like after I retired, I was like at work and all that, and you think, how on earth did I manage to do this? You know, when like a year after, he's like, how did I find the time to do bikes and travel and go to meetings and think about things and all that? Only like a year later or something. So, but I do miss that. You know, if the boys all met down the pub or you know, from that era, we'd all have a great time. You miss that kind of thing.
You talk about that era, and I mean, you were riding for, we were talking 17 years or so, and you would have seen the change from, if you like, a very relaxed era when there was a lot of social life, shall we say, around the team. You know, we were talking earlier about the night before the match, all the rest of it, to the point where it started to become athletes on bikes, where there was that change. Going back to when you started, I mean, what are your memories of that? This sport in general at that time? It would have been a much more relaxed sport, I imagine.
Yes, it was. I like your sort of your role models. The people I looked up to in them days were the guys like obviously when I was down at Berwick, and there was like Mark Courtney and Dave Blackburn, Alan Rivet, and Dave Walsh, and they guys, Andy Campbell, who were all riding in the team, and then the group of people who were associated with it as well. So there was the Speedway bit was there, but then the social bit was there as well. So there was as much of that as there was of the racing. But obviously, your ambition was to be good on the bike, first and foremost, and then be able to keep up with the guys in the bar or something afterwards. But I mean, that's only joking there. But that was kind of the way it was, compared to what it is, or has developed into now, which is a super advert for professional sport now, where the blokes the riders are thoroughly professional, and you can see the difference in the way they race, the preparation, and the way they turn up, or the way they're turned out, and their general attitude towards their professional sport is really good.
How did you get started? Sorry, just because how did you get interested in Speedway? Were you following it? Were you a fan as a kid? How did that come about?
Yeah, well, my family were involved with it through the Taylors at Berwick years ago. Obviously when they were in the 70s. And my dad and Kenny Taylor were good pals anyway. So my father was clerk of the course at Berwick. So that meant Saturday night was Speedway night. And then that's where we went. My mum obviously went as well. So then when I was a kid, I went, and then when my brother was born, Saturday night was Speedway night, and that's where we went. And on occasion we went to Newcastle or Edinburgh as well. I suppose I remember I was a youngster, so it was always in the family. Whether it was a progression that became a rider or not, we'd always had bikes when we were kids, me and my brother. So it was, I guess, whether Speedway was the answer, or it was motocross, or just anything with an engine in it, I suppose, in them days. That's what we were looking for. But certainly, it was in the family. So it was always something that, and obviously it was, when I was at school, my books and my stuff like that were always covered with Speedway star covers and things like that. You know what I mean? So Speedway was my thing. That was it. I was never really. I was into sport, football, and all that, but I was always this kind of guy who's like, everybody's like, Speedway. He's that Speedway guy. What's that all about?
You were saying
big players down our way.
You were saying, Kevin, before we came on, you're the current Scottish champion. Now, not the Scottish Open champion,
no,
the current Scottish champion. So how does that come about, and how do you still hold that title?
Well, that came up. It's a title. There you go. It's a title, isn't it? The reigning Scottish champion. We raced for it in 2000, which was the last. I believe the last time it was raced for anyway. At Armadale, and I won it. Previous to that, it was either Scott Lamb or Kenny McKenna, whose names are on the trophy. But the last one, which was the year 2000, is mine. So I guess I'm still the current Scottish champion. It's never been raced for me.
So you said it was in the family, and obviously Berwick was Saturday night Speedway night. It was probably inevitable then that you go on to sign for Berwick in 1989. How did that come about then, and how did that step into professional racing come?
I guess being Berwick a local track, because obviously when you're 13, 14, 15, in them days you could only ride by yourself. You weren't allowed to race. So it was convenient for me to go to obviously Berwick on Saturday night because it wasn't far. Being at Felton training track many Sundays on that, and you could kind of race guys there a wee bit. But when you went to the meetings and the road after the meeting, you could only go it yourself. So the progression then was, when I was like 15, 16-year-old, was I must have been reasonably good enough or shown enough promise to be signed by the club. So that was at the beginning. Then at sort of 16-year-old, 1989, and I rode it, not all season for them, but in and out because being 16, a bit raw and a bit kind of a bit of a rookie to say the least. So, and inexperienced at 16, so you're kind of in and out the team as it was in them days. But enjoyable all the same.
And was that a dream then, Kevin, to actually ride for your own team, the team you'd been supporting? Well,
yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I'd watched them long enough, so I guess so. Yeah.
So your 3 years then, Berwick, talk us through some of the highs then as you enter your professional career. You're there from 89 to 91. Who were the guys you rode with? Who were the guys that you looked up to and that probably guided you through those first few years?
Obviously, the first couple of years Berwick was in the Premier, or the second, whatever league they were in, the normal league, Premier League. And then they went First Division, and I was lucky enough to ride for them in the First Division as well when the big guys came to town. So that was something. That was something else. That it was you're a little bit kind of in awe in them days, young kid, and then suddenly you got Jimmy Nielsen and Kelvin and Richard Knight, but we'd retained Scott Robson and myself and Dave Blackburn and Dave Walsh. So they were guys that I kind of grew up with and looked up to, the likes of Blackie and Dave Walsh and then prior to that, Mark Courtney and, as I said before, Alan Rivet. So you didn't have to learn a lot of stuff off them guys. They were, they grounded you and based you for the rest of your sort of career by the things that they told you. And I learnt off them. Rivet used to live down the road from us, the next village, and he kind of worked and did his bikes at our workshop at the time. Oh man. So like learned all sorts of, or seen all sorts of things that again since then when Rivet was around. Not I'm ever likely to see ever again either, but he was an amazing character, but taught you so much as well about the bike and what a race and engines and bits and pieces and just the whole thing. That guy around was good, and also like, and then later, well, during that time, Blackie was around as well, and then obviously later in my career as well, I'd spent a lot of time with Blackie, and he always kind of kept me on the right track and taught me a lot of things. So from them Bandits days were the sort of the basis of the beginning and the foundations, I should say, of where we went after that, because they were all good guys to be around, and there was a support team as well, that everybody's mechanics and all that. It was all a close-knit thing. All the guys lived local, and it was all good crack and good time to be around.
How long did it take you to settle down, Kevin, and to get a regular team place and to actually, sort of like find your I'm going to say find your feet, but you know what I mean, find your feet in the team as a young rider? Well,
I don't think I'd really settled down as a rider, or became more, I don't know what's it when you look for the breakthrough or the consistency where you're a proper rider, till probably when I went to Berwick in the Premier League in '97. Before that, I kind of been in and out and round about all over the place, but never really commanded somewhere with, it's always just been reserve, or 6 or 7 or stuff like that. So never really progressed too much in the early '90s. Now, when I went to Coventry in '96, after being fortunate to go there, which was in the big league again, or it was all one league then, wasn't it? In '96, and going to Coventry was a big thing, and the amount of stuff that I learned there set me up to go. And then when the Premier League formed, that was kind of the place that I fitted, if you know what I mean. Elite League's too high, Conference League maybe was a bit too good for that at the time, and then the Premier League was a place, and that kind of worked. And then the amount that I'd learned out of being at Coventry the year before, so I would say became settled in '97, and that's where I kind of found my feet there in a good position at Berwick. And then that progressed for the years after.
Your first sorry, on you go.
Go on, John.
So I'm just going to say, Edinburgh '93 at Powder Hall is your first stint with the Monarchs. So how did that come about? Who approached you to do that, and what brought that spell on?
I can't remember. I don't know how it came about. I know that I'd been at Bradford the year before and I broke my leg, so I was coming back from that. And I think, was it six? It might have been 6-man teams or something, or was it 8-man teams? Something crazy in '93. But I think I did the full season at Powder Hall. It's that long ago now. Honestly, I can't really remember. I can't really. I remember Stuart McDonald running over the top of me. And I remember one night, another one at Powder Hall was a crash where someone happened to back straight and ended up. I think remember Peter Scully. And Scully fell off or someone coming out the second bend and come out and he bounced and he went across the track, like bounced off the fence coming out the second bend and fell off, and then a couple of somebody had hit him. I certainly hit him and went over the top, and the next thing I knew I woke up in the Royal Infirmary from on that year. But I can't really remember much of it, to be honest. Or how it came about. Sorry, guys. Came about
It's good to have you on.
Speak to Armadale, I remember that.
Do you remember the track? Do you remember the stadium at Powder Hall? Do you remember the track? Was it a good atmosphere? Can you recall any of that? Because to be fair to you, Kevin, you've ridden at quite a few different tracks over the years. So do they all just merge into one?
No. Maybe they do a little bit now, but no. When you think it, Powder Hall was really good. It was a great stadium to go to. There was some fine stadiums around in them days, and Powder Hall was one of them. It was a good track. It had funny little long straights, and you had to really turn hard into the corners. It wasn't like a sort of quick, fast. It was a technical, kind of Newcastle-y kind of style of track, I suppose, to compare it to someone nowadays. And it was fairly flat as well, if I remember. But a nice stadium and a great stadium for people to watch from. It was, had the great facilities. You think of what some of the stadiums have now, and you think what was there then. The facilities were brilliant. Obviously, the location as well was ideal. People would just, jump off the train or the bus and go to Speedway. And it was fabulous. And it's a big loss. I mean, imagine what that could do. How good that would be now if it was in the city.
See, at Coventry, Kevin, that was we spoke about that briefly in '96. You're in with the big boys. Yeah. It's one league. What was it like riding at that level then? And who were the guys at Coventry that you rode with that would have been in that team?
In that team, them days in '96, we had Brian Anderson, who was Jan Anderson's. I was going to say little brother, big brother. I don't know. I think it might have been his younger brother. Jan's obviously we know Jan from the Monarchs. Mm-hmm. So Jan's brother Brian, Simon Cross, Shane Bowes, Sean Tacey, Paul Bentley, myself, and Stuart Robson. That was the Coventry team, which was a fairly good team. And in '96, so I was down there, and then that was the same year as the two other Scottish lads went to Wolverhampton, which was Stuart McDonald and James Greaves were both at Wolverhampton at the same time. So for us, I think then the Scottish lads to be down there was good because we were being out in Scotland up on a limb a little bit. You're in a little wee bubble up there and it's great and all this of it. But to move down south and race down south, people notice you there that hadn't noticed you before, or maybe seen your name or something like that, but never seen you racing, never met you. So it opened doors for probably all of us at that stage in our careers, and probably and pushed our careers on. For James, myself, and Stuart as well. I'm sure they'll agree with that. At the time, it was a perfect time to be racing down south. Any time racing down south was always good because you got to meet people, as I say, whether it be promoters, team managers, just general, kind of important people. Engine tuners, you're in that kind of engine tuner area in the Midlands there, where everything's there. And when we were I was not living down there, but I was fortunate to stay with people, you know, when I was down there for a few days and that. So it opened a lot of doors. And like I say, when obviously racing at Coventry was one of the biggest clubs in the country at the time. So it was a huge privilege, and it was quite a daunting thing to begin with. But I really enjoyed it and embraced it.
It's hugely sad to see the demise of Coventry. You talk about stadiums. You know, that was a brilliant stadium, Brandon.
Yeah, it was.
It has excellent facilities. You know, it's sad to see them slip away. I remember going down there for 2004, 5, something like that, when Coventry won the league, to see Rory win the league, and you know the facilities there were second to none. It really is sad to see that loss to the sport.
It is. I think people have said that previously, that the powers that be should have done something about it, and made sure it wasn't lost to the sport. And I think that's an important thing. The lessons must be learned there somewhere, that things like that can't really happen again. The powers that be have got the backing financially to have done something about that, and realised and had the foresight to make sure that didn't disappear. I hope it stays. I hope it returns. The people who are behind it seem to be doing quite a brilliant job in keeping the dream alive, that they're going to one day it's going to return to Brandon. Hopefully it does, but if not, then people who are trying to keep it running will be fortunate enough or lucky enough to find somewhere in the area to make it work, because the Bees are lost to the sport at the moment, and that's sad, because they were the biggest club in the country. You know, to go to Coventry for any of us up here at the time, whether it was go to the PLRC or to the British final, all them big meetings were all at Coventry, and it was a big occasion, and it was always a big deal to go to Coventry. So to ride for them was huge. So it's a loss to the sport, most definitely.
So you go back to Berwick in '97. Do you say then that's the point where your career kind of really kicked on from there? That's where you found your feet, and you really kind of found your feet as a rider.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I mean, obviously, being in the first division and being with the professional guys like Crossy and Brian Anderson, you just standing next to them, just looking at them in the pits, you could learn a whole bunch of stuff, and that's, you know, they all sunk in. So then pushing on to like the Premier League the next year, and Berwick came in for me and I rode for them, and I enjoyed riding that year. But that's when you started kind of winning or becoming better and winning races at that level. You know, for all it was a tough league, and that league got tougher and tougher as the years went on. The amount, you know, the riders, the quality of riders who were in that league at the time, who had come down either from the Elite League, as amalgamated as it was, and then come into the Premier League, or they're just good Premier League riders who were in that. You know, you think of Carl Stone here, Dicko, Frank Smart, I don't know, Craig Watson, Steckman, all them guys were in that league, and it got better and better and tougher. Nicky Pedersen arrived, Bjarne Pedersen arrived in that league, so it got harder and harder as the years went on. So to find your feet in '97 was for me was a stepping stone. Like that was made. Obviously, got the foundations, but that was kicked on from there, and managed to sort of just start to creep up and be at the top end of the Berwick team, which was good. Winning race, you can't substitute for winning races at the time, and that was started to happen on a more regular basis, and then you build your confidence from there.
How important is that confidence side of things, Kevin? 100%. You hear people talk about Speedway being a confidence sport. Yeah. I mean, just as a rider, how important is confidence to you?
100%. Well, it's not 100%. It's probably 95% of the game. 95% of the games is the confidence in it. So if things are working, and as it was that year at Berwick when when it was me and Scott Lamb who were the sort of, well, Scott was the main man at Berwick. He was the sort of number one, and I backed him up for the year. And the confidence he gained, I think it spirals, isn't it? you know, you have your moments, and then the years before you have a couple of good meetings, things like that. But then when you start to get in the groove and you have the confidence, like in your home matches, and you can, you know, you're going to hopefully win 2 or 3 races, and then that confidence spirals, and you take that to the away matches, and then, you know, the confidence comes from a lot of things, a lot of combination, a lot of things to make it work. But if, you know, if your bikes are good, your engines are working, and then the mental thing kicks in as well. So then the confidence builds from there. So you know, you go to a meeting that you've got something, you know, your engines, you know, your bike's working. Yeah. So when you turn up somewhere, you've got that confidence to start with, and then hopefully when it just all melts together, and when it works, it's great. Well, it doesn't. It doesn't work all the time, I can assure you. But when it works, it's brilliant.
Then we come to the Armadale era, and hopefully you'll remember this bit. At 1998, you signed for the Monarchs at Armadale. You know, what was it like then to join the Monarchs at that time when they've just recently moved to Armadale, a fairly new track? You know, and different riders, Peter Carr, guys like that there. I had enjoyed riding at Armadale the year before because it was just opened, and I had a couple of meetings for Berwick there, and maybe a couple more, I don't know, but I certainly had some good, and I enjoyed riding the track. It reminded me of Berrington Lough, the size of it, the shape of it, and that's the kind of where I learned to ride, and so it was quite natural for me to get around it fairly quickly, and I enjoyed riding there. It was really good. And the opportunity came when I got a chance to sign, when Alex rang me. I was in Manchester Airport. I was going to Dubai on an ice racing tour in the winter that year with Graham Drury and Ian Thomas. I was in Manchester Airport getting ready to fly out there, and it was Alex Harkis on the phone. Would you like to come and ride for us? And I was like, yeah, of course I do. So that was it, and we were done before I left to go to Dubai. So I had looked, I was really looking forward to riding for the Monarchs, and A, because I loved the track, and then B, because I was getting we were part of a team with it was Kenny McKenna and Peter Carr, and I was looking forward to that. Being third heat leader instead of second heat leader at Berwick, I was at third heat. I've got 2, you know, top liners in front of that. Kenny's last year. So it was obviously going to be some kind of progression for the year after when Kenny was gone. So I was really keen for it, and it worked out really well. And it was a great 3 years I had there. Really enjoyed it. You're breaking my heart here, Kevin, because I'm supposed to be going to Dubai in 2 weeks' time, and the holiday's been cancelled, obviously, with everything that's going on. So
it's too hot out there. It's too hot. We were there. It was February, and it was like. It was like in the late 29, 30 odd degrees there, and that was February. Well, this is the winter. Wait till it's summertime. It's like you can't go outside. 50 degrees and things like that.
And you friends that live over there, and they tell us how hot it gets. It's frightening.
Aye, yeah. Air conditioning already.
Kevin, you went there for ice racing?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was a kind of how can I describe it? Ian Thomas and Graham Drury did Telford, if you remember. They did the winter things at Telford, indoor ice racing there, but they also did all sorts of things all around the world. And they had previously taken a troop of Speedway riders to Dubai, and did like a fortnight show there. And they took all the bikes and everything with them. Logistically, I think it was a bit of a problem. So a few years later, they came up with the idea of taking 4 of us, which was myself, Carl Stonier, Martin Dixon, and Wayne Broadhurst, out there. And they supplied the bikes for us out there, which were Honda XL 125s, which was, you know, road trail bikes. And they'd given us them to ride on the ice. So studied the tyres up, and off we went. There wasn't many ice rinks in Dubai at the time. It was part of the festival after Ramadan called Eid, I think it was called. Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. It was called Eid. So we were there for the thing called Eid, which was when after the Ramadan, the locals, you know, go out and enjoy themselves a bit.
I always think that, you know, Speedway's a mad enough sport, but doing it on ice with these studs and the tyres, I mean, why? It's just so mental.
you never think about it. And I've done it. I've done Telford a couple of times, and I've also done out in America as well. A couple of years out there doing the indoor ice racing as well. Same thing with the studs. Yeah, it's terrifying, but at the time, I said, never think about it. Just get out and do it.
If you did, you'd probably not get on the bike.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
That's very true. It's quite. The worst thing about the ice, or the strange thing, is that when you fall off, as opposed to the speedway, when you fall off, obviously you slow down. You know, if you're on your backside, you slow down because you hit the dirt and it obviously it slows you down. When in the ice, you take off, which is a weird sensation. You get down the backside, you actually speed up going to the fence, which is not a good feeling at all. It's like, oh no, that's quite hairy.
So how
the
ice speedway? How different? Obviously, I know they supplied the bikes for you there, but normally, how different is the equipment from what you would use for a normal, other than studding the tyres? Is it pretty much just the same, or?
Telford was different. Telford was different because they did the way they set it up. They had we get technical, but the way the spikes were set up in your tyre in Telford was you got zero grip at all, or very little grip. So you had to set an engine which was really, always a speedway engine. If you at Telford with a normal speedway engine, if you had that much throttle and you let the clutch out, you'd be there, or just dig a hole. So you had to make something that was really soft and hardly any power at all, really, to make Telford work. So there's huge adjustments to do Telford. When I went to America, completely different, because they had the studs go into the tyres, so using the head of the stud which went into the ice, which was shaped there. So you actually got the similarity to riding on dirt here to riding on the ice in America was almost exactly the same, which was remarkable. You drop the clutch in America on these studs, and the thing just stood you up like that. It's like, oh, it was just like normal speedway. So that was quite handy to. Initially, it's a little bit. It's like to get your head around the fact that you had so much grip. But once you got used to it, it was just like riding normally. You didn't. Telford, you had to adapt a lot. But here, and doing it in the USA, the adaptation was hardly any at all. So it was, you could just basically take your bike off the track, screw some studs into your tyres, and away you go, which was really handy.
Derek Wilkinson, Derek the bus driver, says that you need to get your name down for dancing on ice. And he also
I could do that, but I could do racing on ice, but I cannot skate for the life of me.
Well, he also says that Derek also says it was brilliant watching you in the pits in Armadale, passing on advice to the likes of Blair and Derek and what have you, and that you're a brilliant guy. So there you go. That's just coming from Derek the bus driver.
Cheers.
Yeah, I'd spoken to Derek yesterday as well, and he'd said that thoroughly nice guy. I'd spoken to Rory on Friday prior to what would have been the British final on Saturday, and told him that we were interviewing you, and he says, bloody lovely guy that Kevin. But he says I never rode with him. I think he rode in your farewell meeting.
He did, yes.
Yeah. And he said I never rode with him, but I said, well, there's two guys, bloody nice guy.
yeah, and they both rode in my farewell meeting, Derek and Rory. Good lads, good lads. I see Rory. How old is Rory anyway? I can't. He's obviously he was a young. I can't remember when he started, but he's been around a while now.
I think he's 35 now. 35,
yeah,
34,
okay.
35. So yeah, he's got more grey hair than me, and I'm 40 next year. He's like more like
That's
Scott
Speedway
Nichols
for you.
Kevin, what did it mean to you when you got the captaincy of the Edinburgh team?
Oh my! Well, you see, because I was following the legend. So I had big boots to fill, didn't I? Big boots to fill. So to be asked to do it was brilliant, and a big honour. But obviously, I was like, oh gosh, how can I do it the Kenny McKenna way? Because he was, he was the ultimate captain. If you go down the years that I was racing, you think of the guys, the captains of your team managers, and Kenny was, Kenny kind of had everything because he was able to pass on tips and real psychology and that. And he was brilliant in all departments, whether it's dealing just with the riders, management, referees, the whole thing. So it was an honour, but big boots to fill. So I did it for a year, 2 years. I did it after. So I was getting the hang of it in the end. But I was always famed for one thing I never got right was winning the toss in the gates for gate positions before the meeting. Heads or tails before the meeting for the gate positions, and I never ever won. A coin toss in the whole of them 2 years. Very rarely, anyway, I got one. It was a big celebration when I got the coin toss right.
What's some of the highlights from your time at Edinburgh? Would it be probably the '99 Knockout Cup final? Would you say that was a high?
Yeah, it was, because it had been a long season that year, and we had a really, really good team. And so the culmination of that during the year it came a cup final against Arena, wasn't it? And I think even the semi-finals and some of the meetings to get there were quite tasty and quite close. And there was a lot of meetings that year which was like that. It was a good season because we had James and Peter, and James was unbelievable that year. James Greaves as a number one. He was sensational all season. And then Peter was part of that, and it was pretty much an all-Scottish team, and we kind of tailed off a little bit because we were doing really, really well that year. Because we Davy McCallan at reserve, and Stuart and Blair, and who was it? Ross Brady. So we had a decent team, and Davy McCallan got hurt, and I don't think he rode again that year. And we never really. He was a reserve, but he was a really important rider. And Stuart got hurt as well at some point. And so by the end of it, there wasn't much of us left. I think there was 4 or 5 of us. So to win the cup final was a real highlight because we battled hard all year. We could even have pushed for the league, I think, that year if we'd, everybody had stayed fit because we were good enough. But certainly the highlight was the cup final. A dramatic night, I remember, at Arena, and there was all sorts going on, fighting in the pits and commotions and all that. And there's not a lot of room at the pits at Arena Essex. You're pretty close, and there was James Greaves, and there's guys there in the pits, and they're giving it this and that, and James is woof, and
James Greaves fighting, wasn't it? No,
yeah, it just added up to the whole thing was brilliant. But Peter crashed, and he got carried off, and then he come back out, and the whole thing was magic. And then to win it in the end, obviously, was superb as well.
Brian Thompson has sent a message in just saying, winning ride in the 99 Cup final. So, how was the winning ride in the 90? How did that feel?
I can't really mind of that, because that must have been at Arena Essex, wasn't it? I mean, he 12 or 13 or 14 or something like that. So it was... I can't remember much about it. I know that stuff leading up to it because I struggled a bit for a few weeks, and I think I broke my wrist somewhere, and I had broke my wrist, and I was kind of getting back into form. Engines were rubbish, and I just wasn't on it at all. But I'd gotten luckily enough through Ronnie Anderson's sponsorship, we got a new engine for towards the end of the season, and that had fired me back to life again in the cup final, both home and away, to get some points. So. I suppose it was. I can't remember the actual race, but that was the sort of build up to it. So it was that from that point of view, both for me personally, that I was back racing again and getting points, and also that they won the cup, and there was a load of fans down as well. So it was brilliant.
Good. You're off to Newcastle in 2001. It's a new chapter for you.
Yeah.
What led to that then? What was the reason behind leaving Edinburgh and going to Newcastle? Was there any factors? Was it just simply averages? Or, what was it?
Well, to be blunt, I had a really crap year in 2000 riding for Edinburgh. A lot of things had gone wrong that season, and it's just, there's a lot of background to it. I could sit here and tell you about it all day. But basically, in a nutshell, I had a poor year, really, from the start. All sorts going on, and it just come to an end. You have your relationship, and it just came to 3 years Edinburgh, and it was a bad year, and that was the end of it. And then I got I don't know how the bouts. I went from like the ins and outs. I don't think I was like, I'm leaving Edinburgh, and then I found a new club. I think it was just a progression that Newcastle came in for me, and I was made available, and I went there. And it came at the right time because obviously I'm coming off the back of a bad year, and being around for a few years. I think a bad year was at my age and at my stage in my career wasn't good because I needed to kick on, and that had gave me the motivation to, you know, just rethink things and sort of reset. I suppose is a modern way of describing it. So got myself some good, got in touch with a good engine tuner. Worked hard during the winter on my fitness and everything like that, which I'd never done before. Normally, you know, we were guys that just turned up and rode on a Friday night, and that was it. But no, I worked hard on my fitness that year, so just kind of redressed the whole thing, and came into a Newcastle team. So I thought, you know what, if I don't do this now, then I'm probably, you know, I'm going nowhere at that point in my career. So that kicked me on into Newcastle, and it was a good year. It was a good year, and as I say, I got some good engines, a good engine, I should say, from Marcel Gerhard over in Switzerland, and that was something that really transformed me as a rider. It was getting really good, and a really good engine. Not some good gear before that, but when I got this off Marcel, it was something else, and that transformed me.
It's two very different tracks between Edinburgh and Newcastle. We're always very complimentary of the Newcastle track on this show. But how did you find, you know, what's the real differences between the two tracks? Because they're very different. Yeah,
totally different. Well, Armadale, you're going to ride it really hard, and you got to turn hard, come in with loads of motor, and it's small. But in Newcastle it's different because they've got big long straights, and you have to sort of drop it in and turn hard, and then use your throttle and your brain. Around Newcastle, you have to use your brain in all tracks, but Newcastle was more so that way, and I had been reasonably successful around there previously. None more so than which Monarchs fans I'll remember was the '98 time when I went to Newcastle and happened to win a wee match race there one night. So I'd had a reasonable amount of success around the place, but technically two totally different tracks.
Yeah.
In that aspect, but always well prepared, both of them. But Newcastle was technical, and you really had to use your head at Newcastle to pass people. And it was easy to make mistakes around there. So I had to use that to my advantage, that people used to make a lot of mistakes, and I used all that kind of knowledge 9 times out of 10 to my advantage. And then being paired with, when I was at Newcastle, being paired with Andre Compton for a season, that helped as well, quite massively, because he made sure a lot of people made a lot of mistakes anyway, and he was in front. So I benefited a lot out of that.
I always remember about that time, the matches with Edinburgh and Newcastle.
They were always close.
They were always good, close matches. You know, you had Andre Compton in the team then. Who else was in there that were key riders for them?
Sorry, say that again, John.
Who else was in the Newcastle team at that time that were key riders? I'm trying to remember, because I remember they always used to come up, and it was always a hard match for the Monarchs.
Yeah, there was Jesper Olsen was he was always a very difficult rider to beat, and he rode Armadale very well. If I look at it from the point of view when I was at Edinburgh, who rode for Newcastle? Was it Paul Bentley? I rode for Newcastle then, and then they had Nicky Pedersen. Obviously, he came up, and he was part of it there then. So they were always a tough team. In fact, Gouldy rode for them for a while, didn't he? As well, so they always had good Armadale riders in the team. David Walsh, I think, at the time as well. So, but we could equally go down there and do as well. There were always good meetings, weren't there? There were always close matches, always one way or another. There were always good meetings. But yeah, they had good. A lot of teams had good riders in them days.
We've got a message from Mike Hunter.
Yeah,
John, do you want to read it out?
Yeah, we have to ask you about the match race that you just alluded to there. Apparently, you're far too modest to explain it. So tell us about that match race that we just talked about.
Well, I didn't even finish top score that night, and you had to be top scorer to ride in what they called a silver helmet match race. And the top scorer of the opposing team would take on the holder, who at that time was Nicky Pedersen. And it was a home match at Newcastle, obviously. So we were riding for Edinburgh, and he was the Newcastle rider who held it. And I had not top scored, but we had a guest who was rode for us. I think it was Paul Bentley who top scored for us. So I was the next guy down, but obviously an Edinburgh rider. So then I qualified for the match race. So sometimes you think about meetings and you think about races, which you think about for weeks on end, and you prepare yourself and all that. And this was right. It was happening now, and I remember it. Not vividly, but I remember the things that were said to me prior to the race. So obviously I got picked to go and race Nicky Pedersen to try and pinch the silver helmet off him, and he'd had it for weeks and weeks and weeks and retained it. And we went out for the race, and Doc Bridget, who's obviously everybody knows who Doc was, and he'd said to me, and I can't remember which gate I was on, the inside or outside, but he's like, remember, he says, look, you've got the gate there, but you've got the whole of the gate. You haven't got gate 1 and gate 2. You've got the inside. So he says, go and get a fresh bit right in the white line, find a bit there. And he says, do that. He says, find the best bit there. So don't go on the rat, find the best bit, fresh bit of track. I'm like, okay, that sounds good. And then another thing he says to me, he says, like, you just make sure you make the biggest roller you've ever done in your life, because it's a match race, so the referee's not really watching too closely. So he says, let's go out there and cheat as good as you can. So that went in there straight away. So off I went round, and I made a start and managed to beat Nicky Pedersen around Newcastle. So it was one of the highlights, I suppose, of at the time. And that was his first year across, and I'd had a few duels with him already at Armadale. I remember when he first came to Armadale and that, and he was a hard rider. You know, there was hard riders around, but he was hard. He came up, I remember the first time I ever rode at Armadale, and I raced against him, and he's up the inside of me here, and he's got his front wheel, you know, out in the corners, pushing, and I didn't, you know, I never let him beat me that first time. But he was there, it was like a Jack Russell at you all the time, you know, and he would never let go. And, you know, I think maybe that day at Newcastle, maybe that was something there, I don't know. It's had planted a seed from previously that year. I don't know. But certainly,
you weren't the only one.
He gave it 100% behind me. And,
you weren't the only one to have a tussle with Nicky Pedersen over the years. So don't take it personally, mate.
But he's took it. You know, he obviously developed that, and I remember he came back to Newcastle. There must have been like an anniversary meeting on or something a few years later, and he came out that meeting there, and we're talking maybe 4 or 5 years later, and man, he just everybody everywhere. You know, he just down the straight into the third corner, underneath about 2 people, went straight on, and that was just his style. And obviously he still does that to this day. But great guy.
Lunatic, but great guy.
Yeah, well, you know, as soon as you put the helmet on, different story. But you could sit and have a conversation with him all day. He's a great guy.
So you come towards the end of your career, Kevin. Workington in 2005. You finish up at Vedcar in 2006.
Yeah.
How were the last couple of years of your career?
They were good. I got hurt. They were good at Workington. Enjoyed that because it was a really good team as well. And it had a lot of potential too. Again, we got nailed by a couple of injuries, myself included. And it spoiled what could have been a good year. It was a Carl Stone year, myself, Kaki Niemann, Tacey, Scott Robson, and a couple. James Wright. You know James Wright? That was one of his first. He was unbelievable at number 7. As a young talent, he was almost unbeatable around Workington. So we had a good team and had all the things, and it just kind of fell apart because we had some injuries. I broke my shoulder blade, and I think that was the year that Stoney might have had his arm injury when he took all his skin. That finished the first part of his career. Scott Robson had an illness, so it took the shine off what could have been a good year. and then I followed up, and I kind of had this that because I'd missed half the season. I had been at work in the summer, which was something I hadn't really done. I always have been working and all that, but when I was actually there every day for that summer, it kind of clicked that racing really wasn't going to be here forever, and I needed work was benefited. I was benefiting being at work every day during the summer months, and when I wasn't away in that, so I'd kind of had half an idea of not racing the next year. But if I was going to race, I was going to come with a farewell meeting because I hadn't had a testimonial all my career. So I wanted to try and see if I could get a final season with a farewell meeting. So I think I'd rang around a few places, but it wasn't really happening. So I kind of resigned myself to the fact that was it. And I was a bit disappointed that my last race I'd been stretchered off the track, obviously with crashing at Workington. So I resigned myself to that fact, but then maybe thought, well, if that's it, that's it. But it wasn't exactly the way I wanted to go out. So maybe if I could have changed it, I would have done. And in the end, I got Chris Van Straten rang me from the new Redcar promotion, who were building a new track for 2006. So I think it was not a long time before the start of the season. So the opportunity came along there, and that was a really good year. It turned out fabulous, and I got granted a farewell meeting as well. It was absolutely delighted to be part of that and to make that happen. Couldn't have been more cooperative. So everything fell into place, and it was a cracking last year. It really was a cracking last year with a good team as well, and good teammates.
So did you feel that the time was right? Call it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what I should have said there was when I signed for Redcar, that was me. It was my last season, and then if we can do a farewell meeting in amongst all that, or at the end of it, then great. And that's so when I started that season, it was my last year, so I was done. Yeah. So by doing the working thing the year before, and being in an environment where I'm there all the time, it's like, yeah, no, I don't need to race for the rest of my life, but I've got a job here and I've got a business here for the rest of my life. So that was the decision behind all that. So I'll do one more year, and then I'm fortunate to do that. So yeah, the mind was made up before I turned the wheel that season.
Did you miss it that first season? The first year that you
yeah, possibly, but again, it was my decision, so I was quite happy with it. I wasn't. I missed it. You come to March and you think, oh, I haven't spent January and February getting prepared, putting bikes together and things like that. So it was a little bit weird, but I didn't miss it. It was odd, when you've done something for so long. It was odd that way, but I didn't miss it. I didn't miss it at all initially, because it was my own decision. So I was happy with it.
I think it's always easier when it's you calling the shots and saying, "Yeah, I want to go," than it being forced on you through an injury.
I was conscious of that. So totally.
Good. Kevin, it's been brilliant talking to you and talking through your career. Is there anyone that you would like to thank who's helped you through your career or anything like that that's been a real influence or support for you?
Well, there's lots and lots and lots of people who are forgive me, because I could be here all day. People have helped me, but obviously my family, my mum and my dad and my brother, and that the support that I've had off them would never have been able to do it. And all the people who have helped me directly, to get to meetings, spanner for me, help me out and things like that. You can't do it without them. I was helped by Edinburgh by Elvis, who you might remember back in the day. He was a great guy, and without guys like Elvis and Les Boy and that, who were around at the time, Cammy and I'm trying to think of other guys, Ian Snedden, Kenny Crichton, they guys are without them it doesn't happen. So they turn up and they do the thing, and they help provide us, and without their assistance it doesn't happen for us. We can't do it really without them, so they're the lifeblood of the club. So you have to thank the guys. around that. Well, these guys are still there, still doing the thing, aren't they? Which is remarkable. And but I remember them guys. Then you thank them because they're all in there chipping away. And, oh, I'm helping whoever, but they're helping everybody. You know, so can't do it without they guys. And don't know. Thank everybody else. Cheers. Thank you. If I've missed it in personally, then I do apologise.
Well, listen, that's it from us for the Sunday lunch for this year. We'd like to hope it's certainly season 1. Liam, you know, we want to be back next year. I imagine we'll be back next year at the start to introduce the team back for 2021. We are fingers crossed we'll definitely be on track. Just like to thank obviously the Monarchs 1 to 7, Scott Wilson, Rory Schlein, Bert Harkins, Mike Hunter, Dave Trounson, Willie Dishington, Alex Harkis, Theo Piper, Ivan Blacker, John Campbell, Stuart McDonald, and of course yourself, Kevin. Thanks all it goes to the Campbell boys as well, Gordon and Graham, who it was their idea originally, really, and they've allowed us to go on and take this on. And anyone who's watched and sent in a question, it's been a real pleasure speaking to all these guys this year.
It has, John. It's been an absolute blast. And to think when we started this, we thought we might do 1 or 2 shows. Yeah. And here we are, so many down the line.
Yep. Right. We'll be back next year. Like I say, we'll introduce you back again to the Monarchs 1 to 7. And like I say, we're back on track in 2021. Kevin, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us and closing off our season of Sunday Lunch.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Cheers, Kevin.
Thanks. Everyone stay safe and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.